Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started? I'd like to welcome all to the Casa Buena Community Forum. We're going to be hearing updates regarding the Casa Buena, excuse me, which is permanent supportive housing for those that experience homelessness that's located in Corte Madera. My name is Fred Casisa. I'm the Vice Mayor of Corte Madera. And I also like to introduce this time Leah Mongan, who is also on the Town Council, recently appointed. Both of us have been involved with the Casa Buena from the very beginning. It's kind of hard to believe that it's actually been 5 months since the project first came to light. I was back in October of 2020. That's when Marin County kind of stepped forward and said, hey, we're interested in purchasing a hotel at 1591 Casa Buena Drive and converting it to permanent supportive housing. The county actually purchased a property in November 2020. They utilized a majority of the funds from Project HomeKey, which is a grant program from the state of California. And residents moved in late February or so of 2021 this year. The town was extremely proactive in this project. In the very beginning, it was decided to form a working group. And that working group was to address issues that may arise, as well as trying to ensure the success of the project overall. The working group is truly as a partnership and it's truly as a collaboration. I think it's the first time it's been done, I want to say in Marin County that I know of. It actually consists of 4 Corte Madera residents. It includes Catholic Charities, and Catholic Charities right now is managing the property and they're also providing on-site services. It includes representatives from Marin County and Open Doors Marin, as well as town staff, including planning, which Adam Wolf is a part of, and also our building department. Within that working group, we also created subgroups to address certain aspects of the project. And those are communications, donations, volunteerism, metrics, and also on-site improvements. The working group meets on a monthly basis, and as well as the subgroups, they're also meeting on a monthly basis. These meetings have been ongoing since I think about December or January or so. So this group is putting a lot of time and effort into this project. We will have a Q&A at the end. What we're going to try to do is keep it limited to 2 minutes so that everybody gets a chance to speak. If we have time, we'll go through a second round. And if we have time, we'll go through a third round. If you do have questions, you can also put them into the group chat. You can also email tcmmail.org, and those emails will come through also. At this time, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Andrew Henning. Andrew is the program director for Opening Doors Marin, and he has numerous years experience in addressing and reducing chronic homelessness, both for veterans and just those in Marin County in general. And he's truly is an asset. He's been a great asset to this project. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew, who's going to do some more introductions and take you through the various updates.
Perfect. Thank you, Fred. And good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to be here, even virtually. We're getting excited about the coming days and weeks and months when we can finally start convening in person again. Really appreciate you taking the time tonight to join us. Fred gave a great intro about the plan for tonight. We're going to hear from the county. We're going to hear from our working groups. But before getting into any of that, we're going to start with some introductions. So we're going to go popcorn style among our group. And so I'll go first. Again, I'm Andrew Henning. I'm the project director with Opening Doors Marin, and I will pass it to Glenn.
Hi, I'm Glenn Barris. I am a resident of Marin for about the last 35 years. I'm a Meadow Suite neighborhood resident. I'm a husband and father of 2 kids that both attend Redwood High School, and really excited about getting feedback from the community on the work that we've been doing to help bridge the gap between what's being done and what people would like to see as part of the community. And without that, I will hand it over to Scott.
Great. Thank you, Glenn. I appreciate it. My name is Scott Garland. I am a resident of Corte Madera in the Chapman Park neighborhood. My wife and 3 boys and I have lived there for the last 15 years. I have 3 sons. All of them have either gone through or are currently in the Twin Cities School District. Love this town and love being a part of this task force. So I'm going to turn it over to Adam.
Thank you, Scott. and Glenn. Hi, everybody. My name is Adam Wolf. I am the Planning and Building Director for the town of Corte Madera, and have been so since about 2014. So I know many of you, and look forward to hearing your questions and any comments that you may have this evening. How about Mike?
Hi, good evening. Mike Moriarty. I'm the town's of Corte Madera's Communication and Code Enforcement Manager. And I look forward to being here tonight to answer any questions and facilitate a thoughtful conversation for the town and for our residents. And I will pass that to Ellen.
Hi, everyone. Ellen Hammerly. I am the Vice President of Catholic Charities, and we are currently operating Casa Buena. We have the honor and privilege to do so. I live in Marin County. Marin is my home where I've raised my children, and it's a very important place for me personally. So it's really, truly an honor to be part of this community and to support all the clients and all of you. So glad to be with you tonight. Thank you. And I will pass to, who didn't go? Hold on a sec. Leila.
Thanks, Ellen. Hi, everybody. I'm Leah Mongan. I joined the working group as a resident of Corte Madera. I've lived here for just over 10 years and have 2 young children in the local public school. And since joining the working group, I've got appointed to the town council, so I am now also a council member and excited to be here tonight.
I think Ashley still needs to go.
Last but certainly not least, Ashley.
Ashley.
Hi there. I'm Ashley Hart McIntyre. I'm the homelessness policy analyst for Marin County with Health and Human Services. And I've been doing homelessness policy work for 13-ish years now. Almost half of that has been here in Marin. My husband and my 4-year-old and I live in Lucas Valley, and we're happy also to call Marin our home. And we're really grateful to be working with the awesome folks on this group and with the Corte Madera community. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Ashley. So I thought I'd start by saying just a little bit more about Opening Doors Marin, in case you're wondering what that is. So the past 5 years, we've actually undergone a pretty radical transformation in the way that we approach homeless services in Marin County by really shifting our housing and service resources to focusing on the most vulnerable people in the community. That process began in 2016, and about a year after the pilot effort that we launched to try to start prioritizing some of the most vulnerable chronically homeless folks, we formed a kind of a public-private working group that included county leadership, different city and town leadership, faith-based community, philanthropy. And the mission of this group really for the first 2 years was just getting educated about what other communities are doing to solve homelessness, what works, what doesn't work. And what we realized locally is that our biggest value add as this group was trying to help create more housing, specifically more permanent supportive housing, which is long-term affordable housing with wraparound services. And the biggest bottleneck to creating more services in Marin County was actually having local capital or local money that we could use to actually pursue housing opportunities. And obviously in Marin, we really value having local control over our housing. And so that would be a great way to actually be able to pursue more housing opportunities. In 2019, we explored the feasibility of a public revenue measure. And while we didn't have ultimately enough support to pursue that, we did learn a lot about what folks want to see around housing, what they don't want to see around housing. And we were going to use that shifting into 2020 to try to do some more private fundraising, some more regional philanthropy for trying to create more housing locally here in Marin. And then, of course, COVID happened and everything changed. And one of the things that changed was the launch of this program called Project HomeKey, which was a state program to actually empower local communities with flexible money to be able to pursue creative housing. So basically being able to purchase hotels, motels, commercial buildings, and other sites. And that's how Opening Doors and the county and all of us really came to come together around the Casa Buena was Project HomeKey. And so I don't know if folks who are attending tonight were part of that process back in the fall and the winter, but shortly after the county was able to purchase Project HomeKey, the town of Corte Madera really took a leadership role in forming this committee, as Fred said, to provide a level of community oversight and feedback to make sure that this is a successful project. And I think I really want to commend everyone on this committee because they not only see this as being a way to provide great service to the town of Corte Madera, but also this could be a model for other projects in the county, as well as nationally, for how communities can come together and support permanent supportive housing. So I, through Opening Doors, have been helping to facilitate this group since December. You have an amazing group of representatives that really care about the town, are really committed to this work, and providing a great service to the community. So it's been, frankly, kind of easy. Everyone here is great. So tonight, the game plan is that, as Fred mentioned earlier, we're going to hear from the working groups. We have 4 working groups, so we'll hear a little update from each group. And then we'll also hear from the county, and then we'll have some time for Q&A and public comment at the end. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Ashley, who the county has been, a really amazing partner all along the way. And so we're excited to hear some updates from Ashley. So I'll turn it over to you.
Hi there. Thanks so much for including me on the panel tonight. As I think many of you know, there was this is a 2-phase project. So the Project HomeKey is designed to increase the supply of permanent housing for people who are experiencing homelessness. But due to the exigencies of the pandemic, the project also allowed for the temporary conversion of those properties to interim housing, which is short-term housing with support to help people exit to a permanent unit, which is the same idea as emergency shelter, but it's more targeted, it's non-congregate, it's not the same kind of thing at all that you would see in a New York City or San Francisco sort of line around the block waiting for a bed that night kind of place. It's a place for folks to stabilize while they're doing their housing search. And so that's what we've done with the Casa Buena. It opened in February as interim housing, and those placements are being made through Marin's coordinated entry program. Coordinated entry, that's a new term for you, is basically how people are assessed for and assigned to permanent housing in Marin, folks who are experiencing homelessness. And so the coordinated entry has identified people who are been assigned a case manager, are going through the voucher application process, or who already have a voucher in hand and they're trying to go through the process of meeting landlords and touring units. And those things are really difficult to do while you're sleeping unsheltered. So the Casa Buena is providing currently a temporary home for 14 folks. There's a few empty rooms that we actually anticipate to be filled later this week. The folks there will primarily exit to their own unit over the course of the next few months. After its operation as interim housing, the project will convert to permanent supportive housing, which is a term of art again, but exactly what it sounds like. It's a permanent housing placement paired with support services that flex up and down to meet the person's needs. And this is an evidence-based practice that is suitable for folks who have disabilities and who have been homeless for a long time. So everybody who goes into a permanent supportive housing program is going to have some kind of disability and a long history of homelessness. And the services that we provide to those folks are really tailored to meet their needs and could range from everything to behavioral health support to employment assistance. And then they're never required to leave, but we do work really hard with clients to be as independent and stable as they possibly can be. And so people do often end up graduating from permanent supportive housing into an independent unit somewhere down the road, but they're not required to. So that process, we're in talks about how and exactly when the transition to permanent supportive housing will occur. And I unfortunately don't have dates for you at this point. It's dependent on a number of factors, including the availability of architects, which is oddly very difficult right now, where it turns out the Casa Buena project is competing with all of the home renovation projects folks have been doing during the pandemic. So we will come back to you when we have more solid information about the long-term ownership and the conversion to permanent supportive housing, but we are required to convert it to permanent supportive housing. It will not permanently be an interim housing program. It will convert to permanent supportive housing. And those beds will be also assigned through the coordinated entry program. It's extremely unlikely that the folks who are currently residing there in its interim housing phase will be the ones who reside there during the permanent housing phase, because these folks are folks who are already, fairly far down the housing process. They're likely to find their own independent unit somewhere in the community long before this project is ready to launch as permanent supportive housing. And I would like to turn it over to Ellen Hammerly to talk a little bit more about the services that Catholic Charities is providing to the residents of the Casa Buena.
Hi there. I'm sorry. I'm actually on the East Coast, so I'm having a little bit of computer issues, not in my regular office tonight. But I wanted to also share that I have been doing this work for 22 years, so long time. So it's quite wonderful to be partnering with Marin County in this way on this effort. So the Casa Buena is 18 rooms. We are almost full. We're just waiting for a few more client responses, and through coordinated entry system, we'll be fully housed, hopefully in the next few days. So it's very exciting. The staff on site provides supportive services to the clients so that they're kind of the link between the county, housing placement, and anything else that a client might need. A lot of them come in with very little clothing, might need basic support for those needs. Some of them come in with health care related issues, so linkage and support around those needs as well. So we do have a case manager who works very hard to coordinate those needs and placement. As Ashley indicated, these are not long-term placements. The folks are really almost ready to get their own unit, which is very exciting. So we're the link and the conduit to help support them in making that step and getting them fully housed, which is truly exciting. A lot of these folks have health needs and are really wonderful people who have been homeless for quite a while. So this is really exciting that we're providing this support and actually success in placing them in housing. So it's really quite a wonderful accomplishment for Corte Madera, for the county, for Casa Buena, for Catholic Charities altogether. And the other thing is that we do have a therapist on site who provides support to the clients if they're in need of any mental health care, which has really been helpful just to support people from the trauma that they've experienced through homelessness. A lot of them have suffered from poverty throughout their lives. So she is on hand to work with them to support the stabilization of their mental health, and then that supports them in their successful placement into housing. So we always say that housing is healthcare. Healthcare is housing. They're intertwined. So for most of us, when we have a roof over our head and we can eat and sleep in a bed, we actually stabilize and we do much better in life, and doors open to us. So the open doors metaphor is quite beautiful for our clients. So I think that's it for now. Did I miss anything? I'm not quite sure, but I'll stay on in case anyone has any questions. Thank you all so much.
That's great. Thank you, Ellen. We did get some questions in advance, so I might just ask some of these as we're ticking through. One question that we received in advance was, and I think you might have touched on this, Ashley, but just to double check, what is the length of time a person may stay in a unit? Was one question, I think as maybe both interim and then the long-term housing.
The length of time somebody can stay in interim housing is, sorry, something popped up in the chat, but it is as long as the project is operating as interim housing. There's not a maximum length of stay, though our shelters and interim housing programs in Marin are very housing focused, so that we ask anybody who's staying in an interim housing program or an emergency shelter to be in some fashion working on their housing plan, moving toward housing. And these are all folks at the Casa Buena who have already signed up for that and are on that bus already. Once it converts to permanent supportive housing, there's no maximum length of stay. We do graduate, quote unquote, graduate roughly 25 folks from permanent supportive housing programs across Marin County every year. The Marin Housing Authority offers a program that allows folks to move from a permanent supportive housing program to a regular Section 8 voucher. So that these are all folks who have disabilities. So their regular employment and the ability to afford an independent unit is pretty unlikely. So that's why these folks are prioritized for a Section 8 voucher. But then that frees up the space with much more supportive services for people who are much higher need. So we do that for about 25 people every year across Marin's several hundred permanent supportive housing beds.
I was just going to highlight the pathway to housing is a requirement to be accepted currently into the program, which is very helpful, so that they are already moving through our system of care, so that we hope to place them within a few months, but certainly by the time we transition to permanent supportive housing.
Perfect. And then we have one more question. It's kind of a two-parter, so I'll circle back on the second part, but maybe just Ellen briefly, do you want to describe any of the other kind of on-site services? I know you had mentioned the therapist, but kind of what the staffing model is.
Well, we have the case management support, which is integral because it's much more of an engaged position, so that it does the direct linkage and coordination. We have the program manager who oversees the entire project. She works with the county on the intake process, stabilization. There's 24/7 staffing. There's security overnight also, just to ensure peace and quiet.
We might have had a freeze.
Sorry,
Oh, here we go. You're back.
There's a handyman, property management, all sorts of wraparound supportive services to make sure that the facility is safe, the clients are safe, the community is safe and happy, but also with a targeted goal of placement, so that folks can move out and new people can come in, so that we create that flow into the community. So hopefully that answers that question. But there's a lot of services, and our program manager works really closely with the community, with all of you, with all of the subgroups, if you will, around communication, client needs. Thank you all for the fundraiser. It's very kind of you. One of the clients did pass away, and really appreciate you all reaching out to us and providing support for his passing and services. That was really kind and generous, and your compassion is truly appreciated and deeply respected. So we kind of provide all the wraparound coordination of services and care for the clients to make sure everything goes well for everyone involved.
And I would just add to that very quickly that anything that Catholic Charities doesn't provide directly, they connect that client to outside services. So if somebody needs assistance applying for Social Security disability income, for example, the case management at the Casa Buena will assist them with that process, or connecting with the VA or whatever it is. And there's transportation assistance provided as well.
Right. Sorry. Thank you. Yeah. There's a lot of resources available. So it's great. Thank you.
Great. Why don't we revisit the timing question? I've got a running queue, so we will come back to the second part of the question here. But for now, why don't we transition to the working groups? And first up, we're going to hear a little bit more from Mike about what's going on the communication front.
Sure, thank you, Andrew. As you're aware, we were off to a little bit of a slow start with communications, but you shall see, and I'm recognizing a lot of the names of the attendees on the from our biweekly community chat. We're sending out, pushing out any type of updated communication that comes out from the working groups. So the working groups meet biweekly or even monthly. And each week I reach out to Council Member Mongan, who has a direct connection and relationship with the management staff at the current Casa Buena location. So we're receiving incoming information real time from the location to see if there's anything update. Collectively, we're establishing messaging to the community from the working groups. And what we're doing is we're posting it on our website. We're sending emails out through our registered emails We're posting information on Nextdoor, and we're sending out news flashes. So every time there is something to update, it's being updated, and you'll see the chronology on our website. We are open to additional ideas how we can continue to provide additional updates to the community. I'm happy to discuss that with anyone offline or at any time. And we're constantly striving to find better ways, additional ways to reach out to provide the information that's available. And of course, it's the information, there needs to be an update to provide information to the community. So that's it for, at least from the communications aspect. As a lot of things are in the works now with this potential transitioning over the next several months. So there will be more communications out there. I'll take this opportunity now to, if you think it's appropriate, Andrew, to kind of talk about calls for service at the location and how the town can help communicate outwardly to our residents when there's an incident that looks like it's a significant issue. So one of the things I wanted to start with is I'm going to provide the stats for law enforcement and fire. So EMS and law enforcement for the facility within the last 2 months since they've actually had residents living there. And just generally, those numbers include 8 medical aids, 1 coroner's case, a mental health evaluation, 2 traffic stops, and a pedestrian contact. So what I want to emphasize here is in those 8 medical aid calls, there were multiple fire trucks. There was a law enforcement response. And what happens during those incidents is that there's a little bit of uncertainty. Hey, what's going on at this location? And so I want to assure the community that when there is a fire-related call, there's a altered level of consciousness. Automatically, a proper amount of fire truck and ambulance gets dispatched from comm center at the Marin County Sheriff's Department. And parallel to that, a beat unit, a Central Marin police officer responds, and sometimes a supervisor will respond also. Oftentimes the law enforcement officers, they're out in the field patrolling from the patrol cars, and they have a quicker response time than those who are stationed at a firehouse. So I wanted to at least, there was, Ellen talked about someone who passed away. Well, there was a pretty rather large public safety response with paramedics, ambulance, multiple fire trucks, multiple police cars, right? Well, that's standard operating procedure when there's a coroner's case. And at the time, we didn't have all the information, and there's a balance between what information we should release at the time and what's appropriate and what's not. I mean, this is just a standard medical aid calls, but we're trying to find the balance of providing information to the community without creating some increased level of uncertainty for our community members. But I want to just go back and just reiterate that the calls for service over the last 60 days have primarily been medical aid calls. In fact, the law enforcement ones that are unrelated, the traffic stops, and those could be totally unrelated to the actual Casa Buena. It is, in fact, and it's just a location where the officers, when they're calling in their traffic stops, they're looking up and saying, oh, I'll be at this location. And that's how those two are categorized in the contacts calls for service. So with that, I could open up any questions with regards to what I've communicated. Sorry, I was kind of rambling there towards the end.
No, Mike, that was great. That's a lot of good information there. I just want to clarify. So you're saying if someone sees police cars out front, that doesn't necessarily mean there was a call for police. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, thank you. I want to reiterate that public safety, they're dispatched in parallel to provide a level of service, and our police officers are first responders. They're capable of providing CPR, a lot of general medical aid, so they will respond and assess situations. So I am happy to report that there have been no incidents involving any criminal activity, which is always very nice to hear.
Absolutely. And I think some of this, I mean, we as a committee, I think we're even learning about this kind of public safety response. And also, again, this population that we're serving is very health vulnerable. I don't know, Ashley, if you wanted to add anything to that about just, again, kind of contextualizing who are the folks going in there.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. This is really, it sounds like, 8 calls for medical assistance in 2 months. Like, what is going on at the Casa Buena? That's not unusual at all for the population that we're serving. The population that we're serving is pretty sick. People who have been chronically homeless, in addition to just having a disability, when people who are chronically homeless have a life expectancy about 25 years less than people who are housed, and they have the medical problems of somebody who's 25 years older. So if you're 45, then you're likely to have the medical problems of somebody who's 70. And so those health issues really result in a lot of calls for assistance when folks are placed inside and actually have access to the care that they need. So it's really not unusual at all. And nor is a death once somebody is placed inside, because of the population that we're serving is pretty sick often.
Absolutely. So yeah, so if there are any additional questions around this, feel free to drop them in the chat. We're also, as Mike said, trying to just make sure that our process is effective, that you're able to get communication and responses that you're looking for and need in a timely way. So if you have any, again, feedback or thoughts about that, feel free to drop it in the chat, or we can bring it up at the end when we have a chance for a little bit of live Q&A.
And then Andrew,
I think, yeah.
Michael, I know we sent communications out. Can you explain, if people have questions, not tonight, but going forward, how that gets communicated, how they can communicate with the town, if they have any issues or anything they want to bring up?
Oh, absolutely. So, as public servants here, we're all open, but we do have the HomeKey designated working group email address. It's homekey@tcmmail.org. But I'm happy to accept any phone calls, emails, whether it's a cell call or whatever, and field any comment or concern, and direct that to whatever appropriate resource is available. I am very open to fielding, those inquiries, and we'll have an answer for you, or at least we'll be working on trying to get you the answer within, 24 hours. I'm very responsive. All you have to do is ask. I know a lot of the members, like I said, are on the community chat. They ask freely questions. I'm excited that most of them are here now. And I continue to encourage those open channels of communication, because that's how we continue to build trust within our community.
That's great. So I see some more questions coming in, so I'll start flagging these for the end. But in order to keep things moving, why don't we turn it over to the exterior redesign group? And I think Adam and Glenn are going to talk from that group, but we're going to start with Adam. So Adam, do you want to kick us off?
Thanks. Really, I think, just to start, one of the things that I think this committee recognized early on, and this was really sparked from some of the discussion we had at the public meetings in the fall, was that while the county, rightly so, is focused on sort of the housing component and the conversion of this motel, which, as we all know, was the America's Best Value hotel, into the housing resource that it currently is and will transition into permanent housing later this year, is that we also really need to be focused on on-site, how to make the site itself, exterior site improvements or on-site improvements, help the site become really more residential in character, since that's essentially what this facility is now. It's a former motel that now is a residential housing site. And not only really for the residents who are going to be living there, who may need some on-site amenities and make it more, maybe some privacy and whatnot, but also really focusing on adjacencies to adjacent property owners, what needs to be done there to make the site respect its adjacent property owners, and then, if possible, how to leverage this property and this project into really some improvements for Casa Buena as a whole. So that's really, I think, the origins of this this sort of small working group, which was included myself, Andrew, and then Glenn, as well as the our resident who lives on Meadow Suite and passes by Casa Buena on a daily basis. So with that, I was going to turn it over to Glenn, and then I'll chime in at the end as well, and with some additional things we're working on. So Glenn, you want to take it away?
Great. Hey, thanks, Adam. Yeah, I think the way I've sort of viewed what we're doing on this exterior group is sort of focusing on what we can and can't accomplish at any particular time, knowing that there's sort of short-term things that we can address, and then there's other long-term issues that we just can't quite address now until, as you know, we have the more permanent housing in there, until all of the work is done to the units to help that permanent housing, which includes those kitchenettes, which will be done at some point, and we can talk about that time frame. But those immediate things that we can do, I think the most important thing is that we can make the Casa Buena start to feel like home to those residents. And I think the more that we can do that, make them feel like they're part of a home and a community, the better off everyone's going to be. So it's simple things like hanging baskets and planters in front of the units. We're thinking and talking about taking down the hotel motel sign. And so that's something that we'll be addressing. I did see a question come up in the chat regarding fencing, and we are trying to, most immediately work on fencing between Marin Joe's and the Casa Buena, only because we feel like that's probably the easiest one to approach at this point. It's pretty self-explanatory what we need to do, and it's a great gesture in terms of reaching out to Marin Joe's to do that. The fencing over on the side of the apartments, a little bit more complex because there was a thoroughfare for parking and a drive-through that was being used by the apartments. So once again, we're trying to collaborate with those neighbors, knowing that there's both the short-term and long-term objectives that we need to be addressing. So fencing is something that's going to be important, as well as for providing privacy for those residents as well. So it's, safety, separation, and also privacy for those residents. We're also working on, I see that somebody was asking about, sort of furniture and putting out some things for the residents. They go out and they smoke around where the sign is currently, which is their right, and they should be able to do that. But we should have some furniture for them. We should have a smoking area that doesn't interfere with those folks walking by. So those are some of the things that we're addressing, and we're doing it. We're working hard on it, and more to come on it. But that's sort of the quick update on some of the things that we're doing. Also, yeah. I think longer term, we are talking about putting greenery in. We're talking about how do we improve the screening from the highway. It's extremely noisy. At Marin Joe's as well as the Casa Buena. I'm sort of surprised that something hasn't been done in the past with the apartments or Marin Joe's to provide some noise, some noise reduction. But anyway, that's sort of an update from our group, and look forward to continuing this effort.
And just a couple things to follow up on that. I'll try to be brief, but I think one of the things we thought was important about really working on this issue as part of the working group was that we wanted to make sure we were elevating this issue of exterior site improvements and how to integrate this site into the surrounding community as best as possible, or as that it wasn't lost in the county's sort of transition to permanent supportive housing. And we were very happy to hear last week, in fact, that the county is absolutely also considering now exterior site improvements, as well as along with, I should say, the conversion of the units themselves to the permanent supportive housing. So we do see that the timing may not work out exactly right in terms of the two different projects, but it certainly is part of the county's thinking on making sure that those types of things that Glenn just discussed are incorporated into the construction project that is going to happen in phase 2 for the Casa Buena. So that is, I think it's a great sign. It shows, I think, some of the partnerships and sort of the value of what we're working on here and elevating those issues. And then finally, I did want to say that the working group also did provide a letter of support for the town of Corte Madera's own grant application to MTC, which is the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, for the inclusion of street lighting on Casa Buena. And this was really an attempt to, again, leverage this working group in our committee. We got a letter right away from Dennis Ferdoni's office to support our application as well. This would be for an application for additional grant funds from the Regional Transportation Agency for, again, street lighting, not just in front of the project, but clearly as part of the Casa Buena Complete Streets project, which is slated for the start of construction over the next 12 to 24 months as well, 12 starting next year and into the following year after that as well. So with that, I will stop, and I know we got more to get to, and we want to hear all the public's comments as well. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Adam. The one other thing I would just briefly add before we move on, and again, I'm tracking questions that are coming in, is that I don't think I heard, and I might have missed it as I'm monitoring this, but we've also tentatively received a grant commitment totaling $100,000 from a local philanthropic organization to help with this work. So we've really been trying to find ways to not, let's say, burden the town and its resources to make this happen. So
we're going to let you announce that, Andrew. We'll let you.
Yes, yes. So that's something we've been working on as well. But so with that, we're going to move on to the next committee, which is success metrics. And I'm going to turn it over to Scott and Leela. And I know, Scott and Leela, I don't know if you've been kind of monitoring the chat, but we're also getting some kind of questions related to this group. And if there's anything you want to address in advance that might be coming up around kind of neighboring impact or anything like that, we can talk about it now or later. So I'll turn it over to you all.
Yeah, no, happy to. Why don't I take this, and I know Leela will do the volunteerism. So just to give folks an update on the metrics team. So the goal of the metrics team is to create hard data that we can use to assess the impact of the Casa Buena on a number of different aspects. So I think first and foremost, I want to echo what Andrew said at the beginning, which is that we all feel like there's an opportunity to create a best practice model here. One of the things that struck me when I first learned about Casa Buena is there's a real lack of hard data out there that you can go to show the impact of these types of permanent supportive housing on the local neighborhood. And unfortunately, what dominates the discussion at town hall meetings is a lot of anecdote. And unfortunately, that anecdote is often based on fear. So our goal was to see if we can actually collect hard data that would allow us to be able to see how the shelter is performing and what the community's perceptions are. So essentially, we've met several times. We initially looked at a couple of different ways of tracking the project. One, which was already mentioned by Mike, is calls for service. So the city will track calls for service on a regular basis. Another one is an assessment of how well the shelter is doing in terms of its effect on the homeless residents themselves, and obviously working towards a positive impact on the rate of people who are unsheltered. That is work that Catholic Charities and the county will be working directly with as they track the success of the project through the Project HomeKey funding. The other two areas that we assessed, one was the impact of the shelter on housing values. I have to say, after doing a bunch of research on that, I quickly concluded that that kind of analysis was going to be extremely difficult for a group like this. It's the kind of analysis because it's so confounded by variables outside of the homeless shelter. Real estate values can be impacted by any number of things that doing a study that would actually isolate a single variable would be difficult. So we may track it over time just anecdotally, but the real focus for the group became community perception. And so what we came up with was we want to put a survey together. That survey has actually been finalized and will be fielded. It'll be fielded to the folks that are both on the town newsletter, as well as those of you who have signed up specifically for Casa Buena. And the goal of the survey is just to assess people's perceptions. How do you feel about the project? How much do you know about it? How do you want to be communicated? Do you feel like the communications have been adequate? And the idea then is to do a baseline survey and then track over time how people's perceptions evolve. I think it's another really valuable feedback mechanism for folks in the community to be able to provide feedback anonymously to members of the task force. So I highly encourage you to fill it out when you get it. let your neighbors know that they should sign up for the Corte Madera newsletter, because that would be another way for them to get updated on the project as well. So we're excited about fielding the survey. It will be coming out shortly. And then, as I said, again, we will provide updates on a regular basis going forward. So I think that was it. Yep, that was it from my perspective. And Leila, if you want to go through the volunteerism, I think you were next on the agenda.
Great, thanks, Scott. Yeah, I'll just talk quickly about volunteerism and donations. So we did, as many of you may know, we did a round of welcome baskets where people went out shopping and bought various items, food, snack items, cozy slippers, grocery store gift cards, any number of things. We put them together in baskets and delivered them to the Casa Buena. And we heard the feedback from that was really warm and appreciative. People had really put their heart and soul into these baskets. We had Girl Scout troops that came together to do these baskets. One troop made handmade, like coasters or pot holder type things. They knitted them and included those in there. We've also had a bunch of donations. I think we received over $900 in cash donations that we used for grocery store gift cards and bus passes and things like that. So I know from hearing from the staff at Casa Buena that they were really appreciative of the baskets, and really made a difference for the residents and to feel like they were welcomed here, and hopefully that they can start to feel a sense of ownership of being part of this community as well. Whenever the permanent residents move in, we're hoping to do another round of welcome baskets. So that should be fun, and there will be an opportunity to get involved there. And then more generally, we're trying to set up some volunteerism opportunities. This is still in the works. This is kind of a new part of the working group, because until now we've really just been focused on trying to get people, waiting until the people move in there and letting them get settled. But once we're at full capacity, we're really hoping to give opportunities for the community to engage with the residents. And so stay tuned for news about how to do that. And as part of that, there will be opportunities to donate. I saw a question in the chat about donating clothing or toiletries. So we're still kind of trying to figure out the best way to manage that. We're always appreciative of anybody who wants to donate, and showing that generosity of spirit that is a real part of Corte Madera, the Corte Madera community. So probably the best way to deal with that is to email homekey@tcmmail.org and let us know what you'd like to do, or if you just want to do something and you don't know what, feel free to email there, and we can engage in a discussion about it and figure out what works best for you. We're trying not to overload the site and really target donations so that they're things that they actually need, where they have a need. So you can go through that email address, and we can sort of make sure that what you have to give is something that they can accept, and we're always very appreciative of that. I think that's it on volunteerism and donations.
Perfect, thank you. So why don't we, for the next 8 minutes or so until about 7, why don't we maybe kind of rapid fire? We'll go through some of the questions we've gotten, and then at 7, we'll turn it over to, if there are any live comments or questions that people have, we can do that method as well. So maybe first and foremost, bridging, I think one of our early questions with the last one that I'm seeing here, just a little bit of an update on timing. Maybe Ashley, if you want to speak a little bit more to the timing. And the other question here is, when that conversion happens, is there going to be another site in Corte Madera? I think the answer to that, the short answer is no, but did you want, I'll let you take it from here.
Sure, and I'd also like to add to that, there's a question about who's paying for all of that, the operations and the renovations. So the timing question, I don't have currently really much to share with you regarding timeline, except that we are targeting, it's a part of, it's like multiple puzzle pieces that are constantly shifting that need to be fitted together. And so one of those puzzle pieces is that the ongoing operations at the permanent supportive housing site will be largely funded by project-based Section 8 vouchers. And those vouchers are only, which basically means we're going to work with the Housing Authority to tie Section 8 vouchers to these specific units. So rather than each individual client having their own voucher that they can move in with any unit, that they're going to be tied to the units. But the Housing Authority can only allocate those when they have vouchers available. And we are anticipating that those vouchers won't be available to us until hopefully January. So we're aiming for January access to Section 8 vouchers, but that is like sort of shifting sands. So that's sort of the best I can give you at the moment, but we will be communicating with you as we know more and as things firm up a little bit. The cost questions, the operations at the interim housing site are being funded partly through a grant from the state for Project HomeKey sites, and then largely through a state grant that the county applied for. And so we're under contract with Catholic Charities for that. The renovations are, we have money set aside mostly from Health and Human Services, with a little bit of leftover HomeKey match money to do the renovation piece. And what was the third one? It's one more. Oh, another site. Yes, so when this closes, there's currently no plans right now to open another short-term housing site in Corte Madera.
Perfect. Thank you, Ashley.
Oh, and there was one other question that I wanted to answer too about the security guard being temporary for phase 1 only or long-term permanent. We are including security in the budgets for the operations for permanent supportive housing as well.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for getting that question in the Q&A. There were a couple questions both live and in the emails in advance around some of the exterior design work. So I just wanted to name that. There was a question about, is the sign out front going to be removed? What about fencing, driveways, things of that nature? Adam touched on that a bit, and maybe one thing to add too is we have found a pro bono, I think, landscape architect, and we're working to identify these different conceptual ideas. So any ideas that folks have, we'd love your feedback. And then the idea would be to further vet these with immediate neighbors in the community. But Adam, anything you want to add to the questions that are coming in related to that?
No, I think that's exactly right. I think we'd appreciate well, one thing that we heard from the capital projects team at the county was that they are certainly going to be vetting and talking about exterior site improvements with the working group and with the Corte Madera community. So any ideas that our community members have about what should be done or what would be improvements to the site, by all means, please send those over to us. And then likewise, I think when we get anything from the county, they're committed to, like I said, working together collaboratively with our community members and our working group on getting a design that makes sense. Things like what we've talked about, how to deal with the circulation fencing around the back of the site and on both sides, and greening as well. So anyways, you touched on it, but I just wanted to reinforce that it's been a very positive sort of initial response from our county representatives, and there's be much more to come on that as we move forward.
And then Adam, just to clarify, any renovations, any outside work, that all, so people understand, that all has to go through the normal planning, building process, right?
No, well, actually, no. That's an open question at the moment, and basically, it's hinging upon whether or not the state legislation actually carries through the permanent supportive housing piece of this project. So, but I think the point was that either way, we're going to have the same amount of outreach and collaboration, whether it's through a forum like this or through a planning commission meeting that gets sort of that feedback and comments and the community input, either that we would get through any process that the town had. So again, just more to come on that, and as soon as we have something, that will be something that we'll be scheduling and setting up with our community members.
Great, thank you, Adam. And then we'll do one more kind of catch-all question. This is sort of a theme that a number of people were asking about, which I would sort of characterize as day in the life of. So maybe Ellen, if you want to take a stab at this. People were kind of curious. I think Glenn talked a little bit about the smoking. People had some questions about the smoking, but generally, again, just kind of describing, like, as people come to the site, what does that look like? And then there were also some questions about if people were maybe panhandling down the street, if you've seen any of that, or if that's something that you might be able to talk to people about.
Yeah, I put it on my list to follow up with my staff to discuss. So I will do that, and they can follow up with the clients. I have not personally seen that, and I'm over there every week, a few hours, every few days. So, but we will work on that, no problem. Some of the issues related to Marin Community Fridge and the Day in the Life, I am, who asked about this? Lynn. I am trying to coordinate with Marin Community Fridge. Thank you for that referral. One of the issues with this site is we lack communal spaces, which is why you see folks kind of standing in front of the building. There's no like community room or a community space. And despite COVID, it's very hard. We have just the foyer lobby. You know, it's an old hotel. And we do provide snacks there. We do temperature checks and all that kind of stuff there. Most of these folks have been vaccinated thanks to the county's great efforts in vaccinating people. So we're on track with that. But most of the clients, you know, they have health issues, as Ashley was alluding to. And the gentleman who passed away had chronic health issues. And it's quite unfortunate. The trauma response of the human body, unfortunately, after years of homelessness, creates various illnesses. So a lot of them are trying to stabilize their health so that then they can, function, and they can go to their meetings, they can make sure they have their benefits, they can make sure they're applying for whatever they need in terms of resources, follow up on housing. There's a lot of paperwork and documentation required. So a lot of them are spending time just making sure they have all of that organized and getting the right supports so that they can move out into independent housing. So I think I answered some of the questions. I did want to appreciate again those welcome baskets and the toiletries and the various donations. We do have a little space to hold things. It's not very big. So Leela and the community group are helping us trying to coordinate supplies, but not too many at once. So hopefully I've answered your questions. And like Mike said before, you can reach out to me directly. I think I'm linked to various things. Either give me a call or send me an email. I'm pretty easy to find through Catholic Charities. But any concerns, we really want this to work for the community, the county, Corte Madera, Catholic Charities, whoever comes in and operates permanent supportive housing at the site. So whatever we can do to make that happen for in the best way possible, we're here for you.
Great, thank you, Ellen. Mike, did you want to add something?
I just thought I'd just take a minute just to add, I'm really glad there's a couple comments or questions about the panhandling. And I just want to say one thing. I did see a panhandler at that Tam and Madera intersection about 6 weeks ago, and I called CMPA and asked them to contact the individual and move them along. And basically during that contact we advised the individual of the municipal code section in which it's a violation of. But I want to circle back that I'm not certain that what's happening or what's being observed recently is directly related to the Casa Buena. We have other homeless individuals living in our town. My code enforcement officer and myself have had tents pitched up at Town Park. We recently did a fairly significant homeless encampment cleanup underneath the Warrenham overcrossing. And so there's some individuals in town that are homeless and they don't have the privilege of being in the Casa Buena housing. But I wanted just to let the community know that. But it's fantastic that you're providing this information because I'm the right person to talk to, because I'm going to work with Ellen and her staff and it's just all about education. Hey, it's not legal in town if that's where it originated. But thank you for the information. This is how we solve community problems.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. And I'll just say this as we transition to public comment, which is that, again, this model of this group is kind of a new gold standard in the community. And so I've really seen a commitment to being responsive and getting a fast turnaround on these types of questions. So I would definitely encourage, if people have questions or see things, you know, Mike, Leela, Fred, the whole town staff, I mean, everyone's been super responsive. And so I would definitely encourage you to reach out directly, because they will get you to do their absolute best to get you the direct answer. And sometimes these things can kind of, you know, spiral through telephone if we can't address them directly. So I would definitely encourage people to reach out directly to town staff, and we'll try to get you the information. Reach out to Ellen, and we'll try to get you the information that you're looking for. So with that, we have about 25 minutes left. And as we said earlier, we wanted to give maybe, you know, a minute or two to everyone. I mean, I'm assuming not everyone's going to want to speak, but if you'd like to speak, now would be the time to raise your hand. I have, I think as a co-host, the ability to unmute people. So if you do have a comment or a question that hasn't been fielded yet, now would be the time. And as I'm waiting to see possible hands, here we go. Perfect. I think I saw Dorsey. I think it's Dorsey. You're now on.
Hi. Whatever is being done is incredibly impressive to me. And as you indicated, it may serve as a model for similar projects nationwide. I continue to be proud of Corte Madera for being at the forefront of this effort. And within my power, I would like to see do whatever I can to keep this going. Thank you all, and yay, Corte Madera.
Great. Thank you so much for that comment. Anyone else would like to share? Phyllis, I am moving you to talk now. Phyllis, I think you're good to go.
Unmute there. Hi, Andrew. Thank you very much. Two things. One, I agree with Dorsey. I think this is a really great thing for Corte Madera to be a part of. I know we didn't ask to be a part of it, but I'm glad that we rallied and are saying and are welcoming to it. And I also noted that you said at one point you were going to be putting up hanging baskets of flowers to help make the place more beautiful. And I didn't know if you had a source, but I'm on the beautification committee and we're the ones who provide the hanging baskets in Corte Madera. And if you want to talk to us about it, or have us just give you our source, which designs the baskets for the microclimates around Corte Madera, then please do so. I know Adam has my email, and I think other people may too. But I think I can speak for the committee. We'd be happy to be part of it.
Phyllis, thank you so much for that. Does anyone on the group want to respond? Thank you. It sounds like you're maybe connected. Glenn, do you want to?
Yeah, I've spoken with Julie Kreitzberger over there. So I'm in touch with her and working on it. The source that you guys have usually requires much advance notice to get those in from Oregon. So we're probably going to have to find a more local, quicker source for the immediate needs to get that done. So if you have an immediate need or an immediate source, I would be up for hearing about that.
Oh, Glenn, if you've talked to Julie, you've talked to our committee, we're good. And I'm sorry, I tried a couple of years ago to find a local source and I was unable to do so. So blessings for you to find one.
No, really, I really appreciate it. I'll continue my efforts and it will be done soon. Thank you, Phyllis.
Great.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Phyllis. Okay, let's get, looks like Emily and Daniel, I'm promoting you to talk right now.
Hi. Ever since this transition, we've seen an increase in panhandling around Corte Madera Town Center, around the red light area that is next to the 76, like also the Volvo Center. So wondering if there is any plans to possibly address that, or what can be done about it.
Sure. Mike, I know you had just talked about that a little bit. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if that you had heard what I had just said, but I'll just reiterate that I'm going to work on that this week and follow up with Catholic Charities to determine, if it's one of the residents, and or work with Central Marin Police to abate the conditions. So it's not a situation that we want to have at one of our most prominent intersections in town, and we'll do what we have to do. But I do appreciate, you bringing this to our attention. I didn't realize how significant it was, or how many times it's being observed in town. I'm in and out of the office throughout the day, and I have seen it. I saw it at least once about 6 weeks ago. But if it's that significant, I'll work with Captain Khalili and his staff at Central Marin Police Authority, and if it has to do with the Casa Buena, we'll resolve it there as well. So thank you.
Hey, Mike, just, if this issue were to come up, like if a resident were to be out and were to see someone there and want, in the future and want to sort of know what's going on there, would they reach out to you for that, or what can we advise them?
Absolutely. I would prefer that anyone in the community reach out to me, describe any type of complaint. I will reach out to Central Marin or whatever, the responsible party, and I'm somewhat of a Swiss Army knife in town, and I just deal with community problems or any type of issue that comes up in town. So, I recognize that we're here to serve the community, and that's exactly what we'll do.
If I can add just briefly, Mike had mentioned, there's lots of folks who are experiencing homelessness, not just in Corte Madera, but throughout Marin. And that's something that the county is acutely aware. That's what I do. And we're working really hard to end that for as many people as possible. But please also remember that we're living in a global pandemic that's had severe economic impacts, particularly for people living on the margins. And so it's as hard as we're working to stop to end homelessness in Marin, there are people are experiencing a lot of those economic impacts. You may have seen, we just released a report on the incidence of people living in their vehicles in Marin, and that's gone up significantly since we counted last in 2019. And that's not surprising given the economic impacts and the difficulty people have had maintaining their housing throughout this pandemic. So I'm not saying it's not related, but I'm also just trying to remind folks that it's may just be one of those things that is part and parcel of an economic downturn for people on the margins.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Ashley. I think next, Steve, I'm promoting you now to speak.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's anybody just going to do random checks on these units down there after they're moved in to see if there's drugs or weapons or anything, untoward going on, and then do they have any way to oversee that, or do they just hope for the best?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Steve. Ellen, do you want to take that?
Yeah, we do wellness checks several times a day. We also have housekeepers that do come in and clean the units, make sure everything is in good repair. We recently had a problem with 2 of the showers not having hot water, so we figured that out so we could repair them. So we don't, investigate specifically for drugs or weapons, but we are in the units. We do meet with clients in the units because there's very little places to meet. We are aware of preventing, as best we can, any violence or drug use at the premises, but they are their units. We try to find the right balance point in supporting the clients through their harm reduction is our model of care, as is housing first. So we are respectful, and we do try to work with people if they do have a substance use issue, for example, to connect them, as Ashley was saying earlier, to linkage and referrals for support around an addiction or anything else that's going on in their lives. So we can try to support them with anything they need, but we do keep the units clean, and there are people in the units every day. So
Let me have a follow-up on that if I can. Does anybody go in there and do they have any restrictions on visitors? Can people come and go all they want, or other non-residents go in and out?
we have to know who's visiting on site, especially because of COVID PPE requirements at this time. So we're careful about having visitors on the premises, so we can make sure who's where.
Do they have to check in through somebody before they get into the individual units, or they just walk into them?
They check in at the main office. Yeah.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Let's see, I think Dorsey, I'm not seeing another hand. So yeah, I think Dorsey, if you wanted to speak again, I'm promoting you now. Dorsey, did you want to share? It looks like you're muted.
Okay, shall I go?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for allowing me to speak again. I've tried to stay on top of what's going on over there. And my impression is that the staff is keenly attentive to the presence of liquor in the rooms. They keep their eyes out as to what is happening. They watch the people carefully. They exercise an attentiveness that I would liken to somebody who has gone through a course on psychology. They are so careful from what I have seen. Visitors, I understand, are not permitted in the rooms. So you don't have that kind of thing. And to suggest that the homeless people at town center are from this place, I think is unfair. I have yet to see any kind of a problem. I agree with the need for communal a room of some sort, because to have the people smoke right in front of the building doesn't give a very good impression, I think. But if you could have an area where they are out of sight when they're smoking, perhaps, that might be a good idea. Okay, that's enough for me. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you again for that observation. And yes, that is something that our exterior group has talked about quite a bit, the smoking challenge.
Yeah, it's a hard one. I also just wanted to say that, you know, what we do is about relationships, and it's about supporting and caring for people. And, you know, at Catholic Charities, respect and accountability and compassion are the foundation for that. So I really appreciated what you just said, because, you know, we're supporting these folks so that they can find a way to their pathway to stability, housing, health, and, you know, and their futures, their lives, rebuilding. So I just appreciate that. We do that with the utmost respect to support all of their needs. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ellen. Looks like Supervisor Rodoni is joining us. So Supervisor, I'm promoting you if you'd like to share. I think
Thank you, Andrew. Really an honor to be here tonight. Thank you to the city and the working group for holding this meeting. It's so important to continue to communicate with our residents to let them know what's going on. And I really, really want to thank each of you on the screen individually for your contributions to helping make this happen. And I couldn't be prouder of Corte Madera and the residents there, and the city of Corte Madera and all the council members. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Supervisor. It looks like I'm trying to tell from. Okay, I think Steve has raised his hand one more time. Steve, I'm promoting you to speak right now.
No, I think that's left over from before.
Oh, okay.
If there's any time, I would like to ask Mike a question. If we can do it off the channel here or whatever, but just I've got a question for him that doesn't have anything to do with any of this.
Yeah, not a problem. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
Steve,
Thank you.
I dropped my cell phone number and my email address in the chat, and you're feel free, and that goes to anyone, you know, that's on the forum here. Feel free to call me anytime.
Great. And it looks like we don't have any more hands. I did get another question in the Q&A saying there were a bunch of questions in the chat feature that haven't been addressed. If there are specific questions, I tried to bundle some of them just for time's sake, but if there are specific things that folks are still wanting answers to, feel free to write them in the chat, or if you'd like to raise your hand. It looks like I'm getting a hand from Aileen. So let me promote you here. I think you're good to go. Still on mute. If it's Aileen or Eileen. I'm not hearing anything. If you want to unmute. All right, well, if there are any other questions, I guess there was a question. I mean, I think it was clarified, but visitors are allowed or not? So I guess technically visitors are allowed, but is that right, Ellen? But they're being closely monitored, or?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
they have to check in. Yeah, and we're watchful of everything that goes on at the site. Yes.
Perfect.
One of the questions I saw in the chat that I'm not sure we got to is about meals. I wonder if someone can speak to that. How they obviously can't cook their own food, but how do they, not yet, not until they have a kitchenette.
Not yet, but we provide 2 meals a day, and we also have snacks, thanks to you all. Lots of good snacks coming from you, and I am looking into this fridge, Marin County fridge. So we'll see if we can make it even more robust, because folks don't have much extra money for things like food. So it's helpful.
And I'll add that before the conversion to permanent supportive housing, that conversion will involve the addition of kitchenettes. So folks will have access to a kitchenette when they're in there as a permanent space.
That'll be nice. Yeah.
Ashley, I wonder if there's anything you can say about, I know you spoke generally about the pandemic and the strains that that's putting on people economically. I have the sense that throughout Marin, we're really seeing a resurgence of sort of homelessness issues and homeless encampments in various Marin towns. And I wonder if you could just speak generally about what you've seen there, and that might help put some of the panhandling and things like that into context.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. It's actually somewhat complicated and maybe not what you would necessarily expect if you just took a drive through Marin and saw some of the encampment activity that's happening. Certainly the encampment activity has increased since the beginning of the pandemic. It's particularly noticeable in some parts of Novato and San Rafael and Sausalito, but they're in other places as well. I think what's unexpected about that is that we actually know all of the people who are living in those encampments. We meet regularly with outreach workers and case managers and law enforcement, actually. And when I say regularly, I mean at least weekly for each of our 3 major encampments in Marin. And we go through the list of folks who are living in those encampments, and more than 95% of them are not new to homelessness, and they are not new to Marin. And by and large, they are not new to the community in which they are now very visible. The encampment activity is not representative of new homelessness in Marin. We think it's researched for a variety of reasons, partly because people, with the closure of communal spaces like the St. Vincent's Dining Hall, Vinny's is still serving 3 meals a day, but it's takeaway. There's no place to sit and hang out with folks and have a safe place to be. Same goes for Ritter Center's day services, the Ritter Center Clinic and case management, and those things are all open, but there's no congregate space. The libraries are closed. Restaurants are closed to Starbucks used to be a place where people would just hang out all the time. And those things are no longer available. And so people everywhere are really, I'm suffering from a lack of connection, and people who are experiencing homelessness are experiencing that more acutely. And we're seeing an increase in encampment activity because of that, just a sense of community and support. And then partly because our ability to, the city's ability to clear encampments is like as we usually would do. And you know, the merits of that are, depending on who you ask, up or down. But we actually can't, in many cases, clear encampments in the way that we often would for a variety of reasons. One of which is a court decision called Martin versus Boise, and another is CDC guidance during the pandemic that recommends not clearing encampments because it can spread disease. And that CDC guidance is increasingly being actually enforced by local court decisions. And that actually happened in Sausalito recently when the city wanted to move an encampment to a different location, and they were told that they could not do so. So we're seeing an increase in visible homelessness, certainly. We also, as I mentioned, are noticing an increase in people living in their vehicles. And we think that actually may be much more representative of new homelessness. Often when people first lose their housing, they'll go to a vehicle instead of straight to the streets. And so we didn't do a full homeless census as we usually do in odd numbered years in January. This year, because of pandemic conditions, we just couldn't use our usual methodology safely, but we did prioritize doing a vehicle count instead. And we're doing some other ways of trying to get a handle on the issue too. But the vehicle count was really meant to try and capture how much new homelessness we might be seeing. And there's a lot. There's a lot of it. We have we poured millions of dollars into rental assistance to prevent homelessness for folks. We've poured millions of dollars into what we call rapid rehousing, which is short-term rental assistance paired with case management, targeting folks who are newly homeless to get them back inside. But some of these and folks who were already, homelessness happens when you're already just barely making ends meet and a crisis happens. And so some of these folks, the economic impact is too much even with the assistance that we can provide. We just haven't been able to quite meet the need, but we are continuing to try, and we still have millions more to spend to get people back inside. But it's quite a hurdle. I should also mention that, you know, our focus has been ending chronic and veteran homelessness over the last 5 years or so, partly because of what I mentioned earlier, is that folks who are chronically homeless, housing is healthcare, as Ellen said, and folks who are chronically homeless are often very sick and die much sooner than folks who are housed. So it's been our priority to get those folks inside. And we've actually been, that's one place where our work has been extraordinarily successful since the beginning of the pandemic. Between March and January, we placed more than 100 people in permanent supportive housing. Actually, we increased our rate of housing placements by about 46% during the pandemic, partly because of a great partnership with the Marin Housing Authority. We have access to housing that we didn't typically have before. So we continue to permanently house a large number of folks, but that you may not be, those may not be the folks that you're actually seeing on the street. So the work that we're doing, it tends to be a little less visible than some of the work that remains to be done.
Great, thank you, Ashley. We're getting close to 7:30, but there was I did want to note too, I think some of the correspondence in the chat has been going just to panelists, not panelist attendees. So I just wanted to make sure everyone saw it. I redropped Ellen and Mike's email just to make sure it went to all attendees. So if you have any direct questions or comments, feel free to reach out to them directly. And if someone else, I know there was the website, I don't have the exact address. So if anyone wants to drop that in and make sure the attendees see it. This might be actually kind of a good way to wrap up. Ashley, I always want to, if you want to add to anything to this, but there was a question about, do we have enough shelter space? And then there was also a question to the panelists about the difference between temporary housing and long-term permanent supportive housing. And basically, I think what I would say is that throughout California, California has the lowest rate of shelter of any state in the country. Of the about 150,000 people that are homeless throughout the state, only roughly 30% have access to shelter at any given time. So that's why homelessness in California is so visible. That being said, I think what we've found, and I think what frankly sets Marin apart from a lot of communities, is that we're not now overly investing in shelter. I think a lot of communities invest in shelter that's kind of on a drop-in basis. And the challenge is that if it's on a drop-in basis and you're investing a lot of your resources in that kind of shelter, there's no throughput to permanent housing. So as Ellen described, what we're really doing is, we like to call it interim housing, where it's this idea of putting someone in shelter, yes, but they have a path to housing. So there's a throughput, and there's not a cycle of people being homeless in shelter, back to being homeless, shelter, because there were frankly people in our community that have been homeless for 20, 30, even 40 years caught in that cycle. And so as we transition these programs to permanent supportive housing, all of those intensive services are still there to make sure that folks are successful, but it just means that people can stay there long-term. They're not needing to move somewhere else. And I would just say generally, again, we're just so thankful for the town of Corte Madera, the community members, community partners for coming together. This has really been an incredible project, and I think it's just proving to become more of a success over time. And we know that there's still areas we want to improve, and the feedback tonight's been really wonderful. So if you have additional questions or comments, please don't hesitate to reach out. Our group is meeting multiple times a month, and I'm sure we'll do another forum like this later in the year. So really appreciate it. If there's any final comments, Ashley? Yeah.
I just wanted to add on the shelter question. The balance between emphasis on shelter and emphasis on permanent housing has been one that we have been working really hard to strike a balance between over the last number of years. And it's most of the time we actually have a pretty good balance going. Homeward Bound is our primary shelter provider, and they're actually on the line. So thank you, Mary Kay and Paul, for joining us tonight. And they provide a large number of beds, both for families and single adults, in a number of different programs targeting different populations. And they report that there's actually not, a huge lineup of folks out, a metaphorical lineup of folks. There's not a lot of people who are being turned away from shelter beds, partly because congregate shelter is a thing that doesn't work for everybody. And people are often far more willing to take a permanent housing placement than they would be to take a shelter placement. So they're doing great work. We have had some ups and downs with the availability of shelter beds because of the pandemic. Congregate shelters had to decrease capacity a bit for safety purposes, for physical distancing. And then we added beds through Project HomeKey at the county, non-congregate shelter beds in motels. We closed that program. We've now opened it again. So it's kind of gone up and down, trying to strike the balance between meeting that emergency need during the pandemic. And then, there was one other thing I was going to say, and it's gone. Oh, well. But yeah, our focus really remains on permanent solutions. And if you are interested in the creation of additional permanent solutions, you can email Andrew because we are launching our efforts for a HomeKey project round 2. No site identified yet. We're just starting those conversations, anticipating state funding to come down in the next couple months.
Perfect. All right, everyone. I see a final hand from Barbara. Barbara, if you maybe want to reach out to one of us or through one of the emails, I just want to be mindful of everyone's time tonight. Fred?
Yeah, just real quick, I just want to thank you, Andrew, for being the MC and kind of hosting the whole thing, guiding us along. I really appreciate it. And I think part of this discussion and this forum and the working group, I think everybody that's on this panel, it shows that it is truly a partnership with everybody involved, and it truly is collaboration. And I think through that process, I think the project's going to be totally successful. And throwing the residents of Corte Madera is just icing on the cake.
I love it. All right, everyone. Thanks again for your time and participation, and all the best. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.